you anchored your change, it sounds like, in something bigger than yourself, your wife. In other words, it was definitely you wanted to make a shift, but you wanted to do it for the people that you love. In other words, you wanted to do it for something more than you. And I believe that, motivation essentially can be fleeting. To me, it's about behavior change that is sustainable. We have to anchor it in something bigger than us, something that aligns with our core values.
Molly Fletcher, welcome to the American Glutton Podcast.
Hey, man, I'm pumped to be with you. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. You are a motivational speaker.
That's right.
And so it's very difficult for me to to talk about this in a way, because one of the biggest questions I'm asked is, how did I get motivated? And that for me is such a personal thing where it's like, okay, this instance that occurred for me is not something, it's not like I ate more protein, or, you know what I mean? It like is wrapped up with my ideas of my wife and my desires for myself. And so like, I could say to somebody like, get yourself a good wife and like have the desire for a long life with her. But that is a hard thing to take from myself and give to somebody. So I'm so excited to hear about what exactly, how do you get people fired up to do anything? You know what I mean? Like if somebody wants to be fired up, I would think, well, that's all it takes. You want to be fired up, so then you pump yourself up. But I don't think that is quite all it takes, if I'm right.
Well, it's interesting what you just said, actually, Ethan, because you anchored your change, it sounds like, in something bigger than yourself, your wife, right? In other words, it was definitely you wanted to make a shift, but you wanted to do it for the people that you love. In other words, you wanted to do it for something more than you. And I believe that, motivation essentially can be fleeting. So what sometimes, candidly, Ethan, when people say, oh, you're a motivational speaker, to me, it's about behavior change that is sustainable.
Right.
And so we have to anchor it in something bigger than us, something that aligns with our core values, something that matters deeply. And for me, we have to have a clear purpose and why we're going to make the change, because what you and I both know, when we're starting to make a big change or a shift in our lives, it's going to get hard. Yeah. It's going to get really hard, and we're going to be tested, and we're going to be challenged, and we're going to be pushed, and we're going to have speed bumps and roadblocks. And if we don't have a really clear why relative to the shift that we want to make, I believe that it's not sustainable. And so that's in part why one of the reasons I wrote this book, Dynamic Drive, is because purpose is this red thread that can, in fact, help keep us motivated. It can help us unlock our purpose. Because here's the other thing that I think is interesting, Ethan. If the change that we want to make in our lives is only about reaching a particular outcome, a particular moment, an achievement, if you will, a certain weight maybe for you, a certain body mass, pick your sort of goal, if you will. If that's all that it's focused on, what do you do when you get there?
Yeah.
In other words, it has to be so much deeper and wider than that, because sustaining change requires us to continue to pursue better every day, not just be focused on a particular goal, particular outcome. And we achieve along the way, but that isn't the whole focus. It can't be.
Yeah, no, this is profound, because the more I consider the universe you're talking about, the kind of listen, every diet I've done where I stuck to the diet, I lost weight, right? And forever I considered my weight to be the issue. And it's just not. Weight is not. Weight is like a symptom of the issue. And so and exactly what you're talking about. There's no fucking finish line. I got to
Right.
keep going because I considered every diet a failure when in fact they were all successes because I was just thinking I want to lose weight. Okay, I lost weight. And digging into what you're talking about even more deeply, it's like I've had many instances in my life that bore this out as true for me, which is like a shallow kind of not thought through goal that I'm working my ass off to get to. The minute I get there, I'm almost always disappointed. There was a time where
Yeah.
I got it in my head that a certain amount of cash in the bank was important. Nothing more. There was no like, I'm going to buy X or I'm going to use this to do something like, and so I tightened down and worked really hard. And one day woke up and my wife was like, okay, there it is in the bank, that figure you wanted. And I'm like, great, what do I do now? And spending it wasn't even fun because then you just watch this goal disappear slowly or quickly. And you're like, what was all that hard work for? And it was the
Right.
same with weight loss. I want to lose 100 pounds. I lose 100 pounds. And it's like, I don't look the way I want to look. I don't feel different. Nothing feels better. This is a hollow goal. These are profound problems that I struggled cyclically with for decades.
Wow. Well, and to me, it's not about a diet, right? It's about a way of life. And that, to me, the traditional definition of drive, if you will, potentially that thing, that engine, that fire that starts us on that mission is about a achievement, amount of money in the bank, right? A certain weight. And, I was a sports agent for almost 20 years. And Ethan, what I saw is what you described, right? And an athlete might say, I want to get, a Cy Young. I want to get a gold glove. I want to, X amount of dollars in the bank, what X amount of a contract. None of that. It all feels so empty when we get there. And what breaks my heart is the lens that some people are looking through, which is that lens. And at some level, I want to help them look through it with a different lens in service of ensuring that they can unlock fulfillment that's sustainable.
Yeah.
Because the top of the mountain, the money, the car, the contract, the promotion, none of it will make you happy.
Yeah.
None of it was. Dynamic drive is it's a choice, and it's an inside out thing, right? Like Ethan, there's nothing external, I would argue, that's really going to fill you up in a way that's sustainable.
Right.
They're fantastic. Relationships, so important, right? But it's an inside out approach to pursuing better every single day. And I think we need to be curious, right? In order to do that, I would imagine, Ethan, when you started your journey, you unlocked a level of curiosity around what was possible, how to achieve this journey that you are going to embark on. But, curiosity is I think a really big part of it. And purpose is a huge, huge part of sustaining. And I saw that with athletes, Ethan. I mean, they get injured. They've got to rehab. They got to know why they're doing all of that work.
Yeah.
And if it's just to unlock a big contract, sadly, they're going to be super disappointed when they get there. It's got to be about something more and the impact that they can utilize by the platform that they have when they get there relative to others.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I can vividly recall waking up and going like, this state that I find myself in is untenable and I'm done existing this way. And then having lots of peripheral goals. Like I want to be comfortable going to the museum with my wife and walking a lot. Right. And I'm not comfortable doing that now, but I also remember, years and years and years of hearing lifestyle change, right? That's a big word in the diet space. It's more lifestyle change and going, well, I've changed my lifestyle because I'm not eating bread. That is a lifestyle change. And it's like, no, there's a little bit more to the point of view than this one metric. that you're going by. And that was kind of the way I got on this like hamster wheel of weight loss and
Mhm.
regain for so
Mhm.
many years, which was like, not having, I guess I thought of it more as like not having a thought through goal, because my goal was just weight loss. So every time I lost weight, there was nothing there. Like you said, that's the
Yeah.
finish line. You made it. I got the X number of dollars in the bank. I'm done.
Yep.
I no longer have to work because, and it's like,
Yep.
no, it's never enough. It wasn't
Right.
enough to retire on. And who wants to, retirement also sucks.
Oh, totally. Retire and die, right?
Yeah.
And Ethan, and to me, and I've heard you talk about mindset, right? And I think the other thing that's important is we recognize that the story that we tell ourselves when we're trying to make these changes is so paramount. I mean, I would imagine there were so many moments, Ethan, where you thought, man, what am I doing? Like, this is a lot. And then you had to, I would imagine, in a lot of moments, shift your mindset to one that was, this is an opportunity to go to the museum with my wife and to feel better and to be a better version of myself and to be more comfortable and feel better and sleep better and all the things that we want so deeply in our lives.
Yeah.
So, but we have to shift our mindset inside of that to be able to do it.
Yeah. I think where it gets really tricky for people is when the runway is so long, and that is also part of what you're talking about, the change. And I think it's more perspective change than even a process base, because process is life. Like, this is just how I live now, and it is very different. It's starkly different from how I used to live. But like, even that thing of like, it's really hard. And yes, I do now think of a moment of real difficulty as an opportunity to, stow in my bank account, my mental bank account just wins against my more base desires or my compulsions. Right. And it's like, as long as
Mm-hmm.
I keep that well filled, I'll be able to continue on this life that I prefer. I prefer this life. But
Mm-hmm.
when
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of it in terms of I need to get to X, I need to
Mm-hmm.
get to this thing, it's like those moments can become overwhelming, those moments that we have to break through.
Well, and in dynamic drive, one of the things we do is we anchored it with a ton of research, and one of the things that I found really interesting is this dopamine effect, right? In other words, the importance of acknowledging our effort along the way, right? In other words, that is what at some level releases the dopamine inside of our brains and bodies that allows us to want to keep going and keep pursuing. In other words, we have to acknowledge progress. We have to acknowledge our effort and our progress, because that becomes this emotion, this feeling, this mindset that's unlocked inside of us that allows us to keep pursuing hard. Because to me, I believe we should do hard so we can do harder.
Yeah.
And that the more that we do hard, then and the more we do harder, the more we tap into another key in the book, which is confidence. Right? Confidence doesn't come from sitting in a corner and thinking your way into it. Confidence doesn't come from, candidly, even our mindset. We have to do things that help unlock a level of confidence that inspire us to also keep pursuing better every single day. But you can't think your way there. It doesn't come from your comfort zone, right? It comes from pushing. And we know that, right? Growth happens from discomfort.
Yeah.
And I saw that all the time with the athletes and in our own lives. It wasn't comfortable for you, I'm sure, man, when you were doing what you were doing. But
no, none of it's
man, did it
comfort.
unlock confidence. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think what you say is very important, because it is uncomfortable. It is hard. But I could take 2 points of view. I could take the point of view that it's very hard and not worth it, and I'm failing. Or I could search for successes which pump up and breed more confidence. Do you know what I'm saying? And this is like,
yes.
in the diet space, there's like a healthy at every size movement. And the part of that movement that I love is think well of yourself, because I think that will breed a path towards success.
Yes.
Don't be down on yourself.
Yeah.
The part that says like you're incapable of improvement, I'm like, well, I have a fundamental disagreement with that.
Sure.
Um, but like I know from experience, a day that I wake up and I go like, this is really hard. My road to getting anywhere near where I want to be is so long. It's so far in the future that if every
Hmm.
day is going to be this hard, I haven't had enough success and I'm going to pack in the towel. Versus it is just a little bit of a mental game or mental
Yes.
gymnastics to go like, this is really hard. Where have I been successful? Let me concentrate on those areas. Let me use those areas to bolster me for
Yeah.
continued success.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Totally.
think like there have been days, honestly, Molly, where I've had to sit down and go like, well, I can tie my shoes. I
Hmm.
successfully learned how to brush my teeth. This is a habit
Hmm.
that I've built
Hmm.
that at some point I know I didn't know how to do that and now I can. And that's as base as I can get because everything else seems to be a failure. So I have to cling on to these things that I know for sure I'm capable of doing that
Yeah.
give me confidence to continue.
Yeah. And you're sort of acknowledging the effort along the way, which at some level is releasing that dopamine that, keeps us going. And, Ethan, I mean, I can relate to, when I got into the agent business at about, 23, 24. I'm standing on the fences. I'm based in Atlanta. I'm standing on the fences of Georgia Tech trying to pick off first round projected guys. And I mean, Ethan, I'd look down the line of the fence and it's all dudes. It's scouts with stopwatches, clipboards, chewing tobacco, bubble gum, right? And I'm this chick standing there trying to flag down these when I didn't play. I didn't play in the big leagues. I didn't play in the minor leagues. I didn't play baseball. I was just learning the language. And, and then there was moments when I was on the range at PGA Tour events where I was the only woman mistaken as a wife. Who's that chick on the range? What's her deal? And to your point, we have to shift what we tell ourselves in those moments. And there was so many moments where people were telling me, "You're crazy. What are you didn't coach in the NBA. You didn't coach at the D1 level. You didn't play in the bigs. Like, why do you think that you can rep these guys?" And then what I began to say is, what is the opportunity inside of this? Right? Like, how is this, in fact, actually maybe a gift? I'm not their mom. I'm not their girlfriend. I'm not their wife. I'm not their coach. But I was a D1 athlete at Michigan State and played tennis. And so I got it at a very minor level compared to these guys. But how is this a gift that I'm different? How can I lean into the momentum that I can create here and welcome the opportunity to be different and lean into that? Because, talent, if you will, it might, get you like in your acting career or with athletes. I see people, they're really talented. They're just naturally gifted. I'm sure you saw that in Hollywood. They're naturally gifted. They're good at what they do. But the ones that stay there have discipline.
Yeah.
The ones that stay there have discipline. And so I think we also have to recognize the power in shifting a story in moments where it's hard to one that serves us and that's authentic, right? Like I didn't try to dress up in khakis and a golf shirt and wear a stopwatch around my neck and be those guys. It wasn't authentic and that never works. So we have to say, how can I lean into what's different, use it, but then also fundamentally, how do I just outwork everybody else? Because talent isn't enough, no matter who they were and no matter what they did. If I can outwork them all and show up more and be consistent in that, probably good things will happen. And it did. And I'm sure it was something you saw, I would imagine, a ton of really talented people, but they didn't stay there for long because they didn't get after it every day.
Yeah, there's a lot here in this place that you're talking about because 100%, there's lots of actors that have been incredibly talented that you see a glimpse of it. And then it is such a meat grinder, Hollywood, that like, you see somebody who's like, no, I can't do this anymore. I'm moving to Boulder. And like,
Right.
maybe I'll fly back for pilot season every year for a couple of weeks. But even that is is starting to be too much of an ask. And you're like, yeah, I get it. I don't blame you. You have kids now. Hollywood can be a very gross place. So that's fine. And I understand it in the athlete place too. I think the majority of professional athletes are very innately talented. And then you get like the guys who are willing to outwork everybody, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Kobe, these guys who are just like, no, from the time I was 8 years old, I just did this. I was obsessed and I wanted to, and I also had talent. And then I just outworked everybody. And they're rare within that universe.
Yes.
But like, if you open that up to the space of dieting, it's so weird because you're being simultaneously, because there is some truth to this. Like, even if there's just so much marketing on a one size fits all kind of, you'll be successful if you just do X. And my argument to that is like, well, this problem would be solved if any of that was true. And yet I say that now, having kind of removed myself from it, but it took me 15 years or more to really pull myself out of that point of view of like any diet or, whatever I believed in that moment. Keto is going to solve all my problems.
Right.
Intermittent fasting is going to solve all my problems.
Yeah.
I don't know a single person that any of these diets has worked for where they just do it, they lose the weight, and it's like, I never thought about anything again. I did one thing, I changed one thing. And so
it's got to be sustainable, right? And it's got to be something that's sustainable and accessible on a consistent basis.
I think so too, but it's a hard thing to sell to somebody when there's somebody else out there going, no, you don't have to do, it's not that hard. It's really simple. You just do X, just don't eat processed food. And it's like, well, the meat you're eating is processed because somebody shot the animal and cut it up. That's processing. Like everything's processed. Unless you're eating fruit from the tree, it's pretty much processed.
Right.
So what degree of processing are we talking about? You know what I mean? Like, you can't buy it in a store.
Yeah. I mean, and it's so funny, man, because when I was a student athlete, it was during that phase where it was all fat free. Like, it was just no fat. Right. And I mean, Ethan, I would sit and eat like pounds of grapes. It was so disgusting. And, and again, and that doesn't work. Right. I mean, to me, I think it's, I do ice baths and cold plunges. I eat from the source. I love the microbiome, the caloric intake. I mean, I'm into all that stuff because all of it can help you feel better, but it isn't one thing. It's not like, oh, if I stop drinking, I'm going to lose weight. If I cold plunge, I'm going to lose weight. If I eat under, X amount of calories, I'm going to lose weight. And so it's sad because I think that at some level, the world taps into people who potentially are desperate.
Yeah.
And so they cling to these fads that I would argue, they come and they go, and the human body is complicated.
Yeah.
And to your point, there isn't one size fits all. And so dude, I mean, I'm down for diving into all your food, fitness. To me, that is so much of what I talk about in this book relative to mindset, curiosity, relationships, connection, resilience. So many of the keys and purpose and a clear why. All of those things are imperative for us to sustain change.
Yeah. Do you think there has to be some willingness in the beginning for, like, because what you're talking about there, it's hard because I think the goal of like, I want to lose 100 pounds is a perfectly rational goal. But
sure.
That's not what kept me going time and time again. What kept me going time and time again was twofold, was like the knowledge that I know I'm capable of losing 100 pounds. So like I did it once.
Mm-hmm.
I know I can do
Mm-hmm.
it again. And then this stronger, more almost ambiguous idea of the life I wanted with my wife and my kids. That kind of kept me churning. And I would go one direction and the other direction, and one direction and the
Mm-hmm.
other direction. When somebody says to me, how do I get motivated? I just don't know what to tell them. Do you know what I mean? And like what you're talking about, which I completely agree with, is the key to success is like to have this really broad process-based idea with no finite or fixed goal, which is
Right.
just like, if I utterly reorganize my life, which I think can't be done in a day either, I think it takes time
Totally.
to
Oh,
figure that
yeah.
out.
Sure.
Like one day I'll be on a path that I'll be much happier with. And then that goal will be that specific goal I could get to as a result of my path, but it can't be the only thing that's propping up my path.
Totally. And when you look at some of the best coaches in the world, they actually don't talk about winning.
Right.
I mean, they sure they want to win. That's over there. To your point, that's your 100-pound deal.
Yeah.
But what they talk about is all of the things that ladder up to that. And that's why I think alignment with the why around what we're doing is imperative. And it's interesting. One of the things that I'm a big fan of is the world talks about balance, Ethan, and to me, alignment is something that helps keep us motivated. And what I mean by that is I think balance is kind of BS, or it is BS. It's impossible at some level to, as we progress in our lives, where we continue to get more and more demand on our lives. We get, you maybe get married, you have kids, you graduate from college, you get a job, you get promotions, you get cars, you get houses. Your demand is going to increase. And so if we don't train physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally to manage the level of demand, then motivation, in fact, is remarkably difficult to sustain. And so we have to say, well, what are the things in my life that matter most? And how can I ensure that I put the kind of energy I need around those things to stay motivated? And I, what was interesting that I see with high performers, that I interview on my podcast too, is so many people in the business world are so obsessed with their schedules, right? They stay so locked in on their schedules, and they accept meetings and they show up to them, and then they're frustrated that they're even there, and they wonder why they are there, right? It's fascinating. And then they get to the 4:00 meeting at the end of the day, and they don't have the kind of energy they need for that meeting, which in fact mattered most. So I think part of motivation, part of diet, part of sustaining high performance is saying who and what deserves my energy so that I can show up as the best version of myself. Because sustaining losing 100 pounds requires a remarkable amount of focus on an alignment to the daily behaviors that are laddering up to the outcome that we want. But we got to have we got to have enough at some level, I think, energy, focus, and alignment to do that. And sometimes that means we're out of balance, right? To be able to get to that place, but we're aligned potentially with a core value or core values in our lives. So I guess at some level, what I'm suggesting is there's a lot of things that require us to stay motivated.
Yeah.
It's not one silver bullet. Right?
Yeah, no. And I like analogies a lot. And I think the analogy to like an athlete just wanting to win is an interesting one, because if it's like, if you just want to win and you're a guy who's thinking about becoming a professional, whatever, tennis player,
right.
You could go play little kids. You could go play people who aren't professionals, and you could just win if that's all you need. You know what I mean? But if you want to win or be competitive with the best in the world, then it can't be purely winning, right? Because you wouldn't pick those people to play against, because you're not going to win every time against them. And then it becomes something else. It requires some other structure on becoming the best. How do you become the best? And then it's also like the best version of you, because there's probably on any given day or at any given minute going to be somebody that edges better than you. So how do you, over some period of time, become the best version of yourself? What's the structure that gets you there? And I even think like the best doesn't have to be the answer for everybody. I think it's a very few people that are going to be the best, right? It's the Michael Jordans and the Kobe Bryants. And it's like, okay, that guy's entire life was about basketball. Your entire life doesn't have to be about dieting or whatever your thing is.
Right.
But what portion of your life is it necessary to kind of move over into this space to create a better situation or a more ideal situation for yourself? Because I'm sure there could be some movement there.
Yeah. And it's interesting. One of the things, what you're suggesting is there's this thing that I think is important. It's, and people may think I'm crazy here, but I do this. So Ethan, I'll pull back and say, what are all the roles that I play in my life? Right. So I'm a leader, an entrepreneur. I'm a wife, a mother, a daughter, a sister, a community member, a church member. So what are all those roles? How do I show up as the best version of myself in all of the roles in my life that are really important to me? And then I think it's important to look at those roles, look at the best version of yourself in those roles. And then even if you want, go deeper and say, how do I show up as the best version of myself as a leader mentally, physically, emotionally, relationally, spiritually? And then what are the things that I need to do every day to sustain the best version of myself in those areas in service of aligning them with your deepest values?
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, what happens so much, I had a leader read an advanced copy of my book, Dynamic Drive, and she's probably, 55, big time exec at a huge company. And she called me after she read it and broke down. And she said, this is incredible. She said, I'm almost 60 years old. And Molly, I don't know what I've been chasing. I don't know what this is all for.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that I'm 55 years old. I've been grinding. And what have I missed? What have I compromised? And what is this all for? And boy, right? I mean, that breaks my heart, man, because we have one shot at this life thing, right? We can't rewind that tape. You can't get the days with your parents back. You can't rewind the tape and raise your kids again. And, for me, Ethan, that was my husband and I had 3 kids in 12 months, which is totally insane.
Twins.
Yes, exactly.
Some are twins. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, totally. So we had one, and then literally I find out that I'm at 12 and a half weeks. I find out that I'm pregnant with twins.
I didn't, by the way, I have 4 kids. I didn't know that was possible. And it gave me like shivers of fear. Like, holy mackerel, that's a lot.
Well, my doc's like, hey, if you're nursing every 4 hours, you're good. You can't get pregnant. Right. And my mom pretty much, when I called her and told her I was pregnant with twins, she wanted to string up my OB doc. But nevertheless, I was running around like a maniac as an agent at the time, 300 athletes, a team of agents. And I remember there was a window of time, the girls were like 6 and 7 or something. And I called my mom and I'm like, oh, man, you're not going to believe it. Like, we flew down. It was during spring training. I'm like, we flew down. We're on a boat. We went to, all these guys are on the boat. Like, it was like Jordan and McMahon and all these guys and baseball guys. And I'm like, dude, it was awesome. And then we went to the suite for this concert, whatever. We flew back that night, got in. I said, it was unbelievable. And I said, Mom, it's cool. Like, tomorrow I'm going to this place, Dallas, and I'm going here. And I'm telling her. And literally she goes, how are the girls? How's Fred? And it was this moment, right? Like, we all need people in our lives that can sort of level set us quick. And my mom and my husband are those people. And I was like, oh, Mom, they're good. They're good. Long story short, it was a moment where she looked at me and she said, Molly, there is only one person that can raise these girls the way that you want them raised. So it's you. And I share that only because I could have gotten wildly off track had I not pulled back and gotten clear on purpose, on alignment. And that in part is what I want this book to help people do, is to pull back and say, who and what is most important to me? How can I ensure that I create a system that is sustainable, that ladders up to that? Because to your point, motivation isn't enough. Diets are fine to maybe get you started, but they're not going to, keep you there potentially, right? Particularly
No,
if
a diet is an acute solution.
Yeah,
It's a Band-Aid.
correct.
That's all it is. It's not the rest of your life. A diet, by definition, if you do
Right.
it forever, you starve yourself to death. So it can't be a forever thing.
Right, right. And I actually say that in the book. I say, this isn't a diet. This is a way of life. It's a different lens. And what's cool, even I'm sure the lens unlocks joy. It unlocks fulfillment. It unlocks connection. It unlocks a better version of us for the people. And the cool part too, I would imagine, think about the impact that you're having on the world at scale because you pursued better for you. I would imagine you have better relationships at home. Look at this show, the impact that you have. So what's so cool when we live in alignment with our values and we unlock the 7 keys that I talked about in this book, what we do is we create a better version of ourselves, which is great. But we also create other people. We can create a better version of them too, because it's contagious. When we're more fulfilled, when we're more joyful, when we're more aligned with what matters most, we impact others in a really powerful way.
It's really interesting because I think a lot about language, and I think about the way language exists between you and I communicating with each other, communicating or disseminating something broadly, but also with how we talk to ourselves. Because to your point about balance earlier, there was a time in my life where if I went like, I need balance, it is not with the idea of life scaling up, right? It is what do I need today to feel calm enough to get everything else done in a rested, peaceful manner? Versus what you're talking about, alignment and purpose. To me today, with my new perspective, that's balance. When I'm looking and considering all those things and going like, how does what I'm doing here affect the other aspects of my life? I think that this for me is a semantic argument in my head, because there was a point in my life where balance meant like, I don't strive for better because I need time here or there. Like there was a time when a diet break meant I eat whatever I want. Now today, a diet break means I work very diligently to maintain my weight while my hormones readjust, because they've just been getting depleted and my system is exhausted and fatigued from dieting. So a diet break is very different today. I think today of balance being, how does what I'm doing in one area affect the other areas of my life? So it does become this weird semantic game that I play in my head of like trying to find the deeper meaning of what I'm saying to myself. What does balance mean? Because I think of it today as alignment.
Yeah. Right. And it breaks my heart when particularly I see people as the demand in their lives continue to increase and they are striving for balance. And what happens is they become exhausted, burned out, totally fried, tired, compromised physically, mentally, all this. And it's just not sustainable to have. I mean, imagine how fluid our lives are. The things flying into our lives consistently every single day. And if we think we're going to perfectly nail every role we play, just every single day, just boom, 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 nail it all, personally, professionally, physically, all of it. And at the end of every day, that teeter-totter is just perfectly level. No way, right? Like there's some days where maybe you're a little bit more locked in from a business perspective because you're on a 3-day sales meeting and you're out of town. Cool. Look at that and say, okay, how can I pull back and maybe get something I missed back? How can I evaluate my life potentially not on a daily basis, but on a weekly, on a monthly basis, look back and say, how am I doing? Am I pouring into the people and the things and the relationships in my lives that in my life that matter most? And because if we try to evaluate our level of balance and or even alignment on a daily basis, we need to do it weekly or some of them even monthly, because there's days I would imagine when you were shooting a movie, right? You were a little out of whack, but you're locked in on that. But guess what? Then you're locked back in on family at some moment in time because you've poured in there and now you go get that back. So the other thing I think that's important is we have to be gentle on ourselves as we attempt to create the alignment. Life is too dynamic for us to pretend to have that teeter-totter perfectly balanced at the end of every single day. It's just way too dynamic. And that's why I believe we've got to lock in on our values and create alignment against those, and then be gentle on ourselves along the way as we attempt to create the kind of alignment that we want on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis.
Yeah, that's the part I think that people, and I think it's probably as true for somebody who's an athlete or somebody who's dieting, when your purpose is skewed towards results, it's very hard to see that because you're just tracking results. And if you're putting your life in the hands of the process and you're turning yourself, it's almost like submission. You know, for me, I'm a sober person. I've been sober a long time. And when I struggled with, like, if I can just stay sober for 30 days, I'll be fine. And that wasn't the case. Right. And I'm like, where is the result? I want this need within myself to go away after a certain amount of time of abstaining. And it never did. You know, I felt like there were many times that's why I threw the towel in. Well, if it's not going to go away in 30 days, well, forget it. I'll just use drugs again. But I also would connive for many reasons to not stick to that plan for a long time, right? Before I started addressing why I needed to use drugs and alcohol slightly differently than most of the other people I know. But yeah, the process, the purpose, the general, how does your life align along all aspects of life? Those things are so important. And again, it's a hard sell to somebody who's like, I just want to lose 100 pounds. And it's like, great, do keto. You can lose it. It'll be hard, but you can probably lose 100 pounds and then probably gain it all back and you won't be happy.
Right. Well, and you know, I think sometimes we have to say to ourselves, when I'm saying no to something, alcohol, drugs, a food choice, whatever, I'm saying yes to something else. And I think that mindset shift is imperative when we're in the moment.
Yeah.
Right. When we're in the moment where, you know, and if we have clarity on the things in our lives that matter most, the yeses and the no create the alignment that we're going for. Because no is hard. Yeah. No to the drugs, the alcohol, to the behavior for whatever reason that has become a part of the way we operate. It's hard. It's really hard. So we have to say, okay, but I've gotten really clear on what matters most. I've gotten really clear on how I want to show up. So that no is actually easier because I'm saying yes to what I know I want most. I want to feel better tomorrow. I want to look better tomorrow. I want to have the kind of energy that I need for my kids, for the people that I lead, for the big pitch, the big meeting, or whatever tomorrow. So alignment, I think, ladders up to the clarity that has to be created on the front end. People often ask me at keynotes, and if we go to Q&A, you know, this question about balance. I mean, I work, I travel, 3 kids in 12 months. They're like, how did you do that? And it was so much. Well, number one, I made a lot of mistakes, which then created an opportunity for me to reevaluate. And that was when I created something I do talk about in the book, which gives people an opportunity to say, what matters most? How much time and attention and energy are you giving to that thing that matters most? And then can we look and see, do we have a gap relative to how important something is to you and how much actually time and energy and attention you are in fact giving to that thing in your life? And now how do we take action on a gap that we have potentially in something that we've said matters most? And it's hard, but what it does is it offsets regret. It offsets disappointment. It offsets missing things in our lives that really, really matter. And I mean, I can remember, man, Ethan, I'd be reading my daughter's a book at night, and I get a call from a ball player who's driving home from the ballpark, and he's all pumped. Literally, I'm reading a story. My phone rings. My guys never went to voicemail because they don't even know that you have another client. A, B, they don't think you have a life, candidly, and you take their call, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm laying in bed reading my daughter's story. I grab the phone. I run out into the hallway, and you got to know, you can't pick up a phone from a ball player that went 3 for 4 with a bomb in the bottom of the 9th inning and not go. You can't go, hey, dude, what's up, man? Like, you got to know that he hit the bomb in the bottom, right? So, and long story short, at this particular moment, he had gotten called up to the big leagues, which was, I mean, he had gotten called up. This guy was in AAA, got called up to the bigs, and he was so, obviously he was elated. I mean, this is a moment he'd been waiting for. But my daughter the next day had this huge play that she was in. And I always wanted to be the mom, again, because I'd gotten aligned on this, that when my kids look out in the audience, and yeah, they're in 5th grade and it's a play and they're not trying to become you in Hollywood per se. And I always wanted to be that mom that they knew that I was always there, that I always showed up in those kinds of moments. And that was a tough one. I got a guy that's pitching his first outing in the big leagues or a game in the big leagues. And I got a daughter who's got a big moment that I had previously gotten clear on that most to be at these kinds of events. And that's where I think you have to go to the alignment, to the clarity, to the core values to make a decision on what do you say yes to? Do you go to that guy's first big league outing, or do you go to the play because you already got clear on it? And we have to ask ourselves some tough questions in those moments. But, I ended up going to the play, and I went to the next game the next day. And did he fire me? No, right? Because I'd filled that tank so full in advance of that moment. And I just think so often in life, people react and go and say yes to meetings that they don't really need to be at. They say yes to coffees. They say yes to travel. They say yes to dinners. They say yes to things without a level of clarity and intention that results in a misalignment. And at scale, that misalignment is really scary relative to the level of regret, misses, and disappointment in life. It candidly just breaks my heart. And I want this book to help change that for people so they can live into fulfillment and joy in a way that's sustainable.
Okay, so question for you. If when doing this alignment, you discover that something that's a part of your life that's almost become innate or habitual is grossly misaligned, is it like your analogy, if you had missed 50 or 100 plays or whatever, call it whatever it is, do you think it would be harder to change that behavior once it's ingrained? Or do you think it's just as simple as spotting it and going, no, that aspect is not servicing or facilitating the rest of my life. I need to change that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. And I think, look, I mean, we're humans, right? We're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. And sometimes we're going to make mistakes for a long period of time. But I think as long as when we can recognize an area in our life where maybe we're settling for less than the best version of ourselves, the minute that we recognize that, we have to recognize, number one, we have a choice that we can then make. And so then we have to pull back and say, what's the next right shift that I need to make in service of creating the kind of change that I want to create?
Right.
And in a way it's measurable and a way that's sustainable. And so, this happened to me recently. We took a team through a workshop, an organization. We did this. We pulled back and there was this guy at the back of the room in this workshop. He was a big dude, man. He was like Wranglers, cowboy boots, right? Tough. Kind of looked like you, right? Like sitting on tough dude. And he kind of walks in and he's sort of sitting at the back of the room, and he's like, why am I here? Right? You could tell he was annoyed. He was a couple minutes late, whatever. Comes in, and so I look over at this guy that is clearly identifying sort of a gap, and he's rating at that point how he is sort of on a scale of 1 to 10, how much time and attention and energy he's giving these 5 things that we identified were most important. And this big tough dude, right, didn't want to be there. He starts, I see tears coming down onto his workbook. And I sort of quietly walk over to him and I hand him a tissue, and I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, man, this is crazy. He's like, I say that my son, he was divorced, really matters to me, but you know what? I'm not there for him. I don't show up for him. I'm not at his games. I'm not taking him to church. That's a priority to me. I'm not having dinners with him. Sometimes I don't even take him on the days that I have him. And he's just breaking down. And so we then pulled back and said, okay, what are the things that we need to do mentally, physically, emotionally, relationally to begin to take the next right step in each of these areas, mentally, physically, emotionally, in your life to create the kind of alignment that you want with your son. And so to your point, he was in his early teens. And the coolest part was probably less than a year later, I get a note from this man, and he was going to church with his son. He was going to his baseball games. He was prioritizing time with his son in a way that was minimizing the gap that we had before, which was like he was like a 3 with his son, but his son was a 10 relative to importance. And we closed that gap to like an 8.5, I think, on a 10 scale, to where now he was living into what mattered most to him. He was prioritizing his son. He was scheduling time in his calendar to protect that time, to ensure he lived with intention relative to that thing that mattered. So yes, had he missed 12, 13, 14 years of some misses? Sure. But boy, at 14 or 15, his son, he was now able to realign, reconnect, and go deeper and build a relationship. And this was 4 or 5 years ago that we did this with this man. And he still keeps me informed on his relationship with his son. And it's just, that is, if we don't catch those gaps, whenever we catch them and make the shift, then we potentially are standing there at the end of our lives, and we've missed something that matters most, that through a very simple process, not to say the daily behaviors following it are simple, they're hard, but through that, we can offset the risk of regret, the risk of being and staying stuck in a place that isn't aligned with what matters most.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the other really great thing to glean from that story is just the idea that it's too late, like
it's not too late.
Yeah. I'm almost 50. I'm a grandfather. There could be lots of reasons why, why am I still trying, why don't I just go it's fine, no more effort in this area, right? And I think that is a silly point of view also. But I could totally talk to somebody who could give me 100 reasons why they didn't start early enough on anything.
Mm-hmm. But there's a difference between complacency and contentment.
Yeah.
Right? There's a big difference. I'm not suggesting that contentment is a bad thing.
Right.
But I'm suggesting that staying stagnant isn't in fact what drives us as human beings.
Yeah. No, and I don't believe in stagnancy. I don't believe in a static. I think we're really going one way or the other. It could be very 100%. Slowly, but I really do think we're either pushing or urging towards one direction or the other. And this idea of no, I'm just going to stay the way I am. It's think about a house. You work your ass off to buy a house. If you put no further effort into the house will deteriorate. You're going to eventually need to clean the house. The lawn will overgrow. It will start to fall apart. So you're either maintaining the house or improving the house, or you're going to wake up one day and live in a hovel and be like, what happened? It was such a nice house once upon a time.
Yeah. Totally. And that to me, the opposite of dynamic drive is complacency. Right. And people don't like to talk about it, right? If I ask somebody, hey, do you feel a little bit stuck in any area of your life? People say, yeah, I do. And they might open up and share. But if you ask somebody if they feel complacent, that freaks them out because they're like, me? No. Right. So it's like, okay, so we're locked and loaded in all the areas. But the thing that's scary is complacency. It can sneak in, to your point. Like, you don't mow the lawn 1 week, right? But then it kind of, maybe it keeps going, right? You don't clean the house, it can set, it's like this invisible weed that can sort of start to grow. And then we find ourselves in a place where turning that ship around, it's just harder. Is it possible? To your point earlier, 100%. But it gets harder. It gets harder to make a shift. And what breaks my heart, sometimes we're locked and loaded in our careers, and we sort of become complacent maybe in our marriage. And we're killing it at work, but then we wake up and we go, who am I married to? Have we taken time to be together? Are we pouring into each other? Are we prioritizing each other? And it sort of evolved. And then you find yourself going, man, and you've unintentionally become complacent in a really important relationship in your life. And this approach, if you will, this new approach, I believe, to living into dynamic drive is it offsets the opportunity for complacency to set in at all.
Yeah. No, I love that. I can't wait to read it. I love the idea of it. It speaks to my heart. I have what I believe to be like a fairy tale life with the most wonderful girl ever who like unlocked so much. And even in that area, there will come times where my wife is like, motherfucker, you got to take me out sometime. You know what I mean? Like, it can't just be, we got to also do other stuff, just us. And I'm like, oh yes, I'm sorry. Complacency absolutely can sneak in. And it is something like that, I think it's not innate to most people, because I think even if you took our heroes, you could examine their lives and they could even come up with areas to improve. Do you know what I mean? Like
100%.
Tiger Woods, greatest golf player, probably needed to work on his marriage a little bit. You know what I mean? Like just from an outside perspective. And I bet he wouldn't even be mad at me saying that.
Yeah. No, totally. And it's interesting. You think about some of the recent athletes, right? To your point, like Scotty Scheffler. Okay. So here's a guy that wins the Masters. I mean, he's winning. It's like every other tour player is like, dude, when is this guy going to take a week off so we have a shot, right? So he's winning. He wins the Masters and he plays the following week, right? In other words, that is just a notch along the way for him. He's not focused on X number of majors, or it's a part of the journey that he's on, but that isn't the total focus. He is wanting to wake up every single day. So Scotty Scheffler's a guy that wants to get better every single day as a golfer, as a father. And it's funny, Caitlin Clark, for example, now in the WNBA, obviously really put women's basketball in sort of many more people's living rooms when they were watching it. But here's somebody I know, and I don't know her at all, but she has unbelievable results at Iowa as a basketball player. And then she goes to the WNBA. And so many people thought, well, she didn't win the championship. Is she going to stay at Iowa? She's on it. She lives dynamic drive. She wants to get better every single day. It's not about an outcome per se.
Right.
It's about how can I continue to play at the highest level, pursue the better version of me as an athlete, and create an environment for me to do that. And so it is a different lens by which we can pursue life that unlocks an opportunity for us to continue to push ourselves as a human being in all areas of our lives that I think we are wired to want to get better. Yeah. I don't think as human beings we're wired to want to not have purpose. I think we all need. I had athletes who made a couple $1 million a month, and their wives would go be real estate agents. Why? They don't need the money. They want fulfillment. They want a purpose. We all need that. So important.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a radical way to frame it too, because I think that we're all searching for that innately. And I think that to give a path to discovering it, to actually figuring it out rather than just moving as though we found it. You know what I mean? Like that for me was the big change, was like, no, I'm doing what I believe to be right. But there was no examination. There was no, there was no sitting down and going like, why is this right? There was no questioning it. There was no figuring it out. It was just moving in a line because I think this is the way to go. And then with some examination, it's almost a revelation of like, oh no, I can do this better. I can do this, I can fulfill more with the areas of my life that are important to me than I'm fulfilling. It's really a cool thing. I can't wait to read your book.
Oh man. Well, listen, if I think my publisher sent you one, but if they haven't, I'm going to make sure you get one, bud.
Yeah, please do.
For sure.
Molly,
Totally.
thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation. I'm so excited and I really appreciate you.
Thank you for the work that you do. You're making so many people live healthier lives, which is such an important part of showing up better in the world. So thank you for what you've done and do. And congratulations to you on your healthy life as well, Ethan. Super fun, man.
Thank you.